The BeastNet Canadian Edition podcast is proudly brought to you by
Grit Farm Fitness. Here we discuss all things obstacle course racing related, as well as
endurance, conditioning, running, rucking, and much more.
Welcome to the BeastNet Canadian Edition.
Welcome to BeastNet. I'm Dave Claxton, and today I have with me a guest. And if you're in the 55 age group and over, what I'm about to say should really ruin your day. And that's John Loney's here. And the reason being is anytime John's at a 55 or over OCR, there's at least one podium spot gone. And, you know, he might disagree with that, but stats prove my point. So, John, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Dave. How are you?
Excellent.
Good.
And all modesty aside, man, I've gone through the Athlinks and the Spartan results, and I've seen it firsthand. Pretty much when you're there, there's one less podium spot for everybody else to
have. well, thanks. That's flattering, but that's never been like I've always said, like, even with athletes that I've coached, I've always said that stuff is like the byproduct of what you do. Like, if you focus on your training and your nutrition and all that stuff, then that stuff comes. And so I've been lucky, but it's never been what drives me. I love the feeling of like finishing a race and going like, oh yeah, I get to stand on top of the podium in like half an hour. I'm like, that's cool. But that's not what drives me during my training. And it's not what drives, it's just a byproduct of all the hard work. So
straight up, man, then what is the drive? What does drive you?
Well, I've had this conversation with lots of people. I think it was a major factor in why sadly why my marriage ended, was that I'm this is what has driven since I found running when I was 13 or 14. I've always had this need to, like, when I take something up, I have to know how good I am at it. I have to quantify it somehow. I have to have that like feedback. And so when I got into OCR, same thing. Like it all of a sudden became like, okay, I'm proficient at this and I'm getting results, but like how good am I? And so I needed to quantify that. I needed to go. And I've always said, if you want to, you have to get better, you got to be around better athletes and you got to race better people. And so, yeah, I've always kind of had this need when I take up a sport. I got to know where I'm at. And I'm not going to do it if I can't be as good as I can possibly be. And sometimes that's not where I want to be. Like some sports I've taken up, I'm like, I'm not going to be that good at this one. So I quit it, which is kind of a sucky attitude. But that's sort of the truth. If I'm not going to be competitive at it, then why bother? And I've had that conversation with lots of people. Like, would you ever do OCR races for fun? Would you ever do a Spartan race for fun? I'm like, no, I have no interest in, like, I would do it like with somebody. Like I'm trying to get my brother to do one with me, and I would love to do one with him. But yeah, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to sort of do it as best as I can, or I'm not going to bother.
So I'm not going to see you in like the open waves in the back there, posing for the pictures of the dunk walk.
That's not going to happen unless I'm helping someone. No, unless I'm helping somebody out or getting somebody else into the sport. I'd love to do that. But for me, it's like, I got to be competitive, or that's not going to happen.
So like your last competitive year would have been in 2019. You were able to compete in 2019, right? And
yes.
How did that year go for you? How did that round out? Because I already know, but like, tell everybody, how did 2019 go for you?
2019 was absolutely amazing right up until Tahoe.
Oh,
it was flawless. A year ago now, well, a little more than a year ago, like I was in the best shape of my life post maybe 40, like for real. Like my running was spot on. Like last fall, I was doing run workouts that were just, I was surprised at how good they were. And I went into Tahoe with this mindset where like I'm going to win this thing. If somebody wants to beat me, they're going to have to like die trying. Cause the year before I finished fourth, I'd been second for a lot of the race, and then failed one obstacle late that cost me a couple spots, and then but I was just dialed in. This like last September I was just flying, and then Tahoe happened, and that was kind of crushing.
Yeah, and so fill us all in, then. What happened at Tahoe?
Well, it's a lot. I've had a lot of time, like over a year now, to reflect on it, and I think I've just kind of put it behind me as like a life experience. But like anybody that was there kind of knows what happened. Like the morning of, we woke up to these horrendous weather conditions with, up at the top of the mountain was extremely cold and windy, and there was, several inches of snow on the ground, and the race was delayed, and then they shifted around start times. And I'm not hooked into my phone. If you look at me an hour or two before a race, I am nowhere near my phone. And the morning of the race, the only way they notified some of us in the age group divisions of shifts in our start times was via emails or texts. Mm-hmm. Well, anybody that knows me knows that I'm nowhere near my phone an hour or two before a race. I'm getting prepared. I'm doing my stuff. I'm doing, with that weather, I was doing last minute, wardrobe decisions.
Yep.
And so, I got to the start, and I just got, and again, I've said there were a lot of other people that had miserable days that day for a lot of scarier reasons than mine. I mean, they had, there was a ton of hypothermia. There was a lot of people in real peril that day. I was never in peril, but I was put in a situation that I just don't think somebody should have been put in. And I was standing, it was the most helpless feeling of my entire life, really, was standing there on a start line being told, like, hey, you missed your wave. Like, it went 20 minutes ago. And nobody seemed to have an answer for me. Like, well, what do I do? What's the deal here? And then the answer was, after consulting with a couple of officials, was, well, you can go, but if you podium, it won't count. And you're going to take, I think they told me I was going to take a time penalty of 20 minutes, I think, maybe more. And I'd done some calculations. Like, there's some guys in my age group that, to be honest, I'm going to beat by 20, 30 minutes. So I thought mathematically, maybe I can do this. But then on the back of my head was, but it's not going to count anyway. Like, if you podium, it won't count. So that's the mind. And I stood there just feeling like I have no idea what to do right now, but I was like frantic. And I'm like, I don't want to be like a dick here, but like, you don't understand. Like, I'm not here just to finish this thing.
No.
My whole year has been leading up to this race, and I'm here to, quite frankly, to win it. And if you're going to tell me that I'm going to take a huge time penalty and it's not going to count anyway, even if I finish top 3, but you can go ahead and go. I mean, that for me, the analogy was like, saying to somebody before like a Super Bowl game, like, well, you can play the game, but even if you win, it won't count. The other team's going to win. But you can go ahead and play if you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah. Part of me was like, okay, suck it up. And then part of me was like, if you go out there for 3 hours and suck it up, like, for what?
Yeah.
So it was a very strange, and I got out there and I ran on adrenaline for the first while. And then it all kind of started to sink in, especially when I started getting cold. And it was like, what am I doing this for? And once we got wet, I don't think I was ever hypothermic, but I was getting there.
Yeah.
And then just kind of the weight of the day kind of came down on me. And I just tried to like hightail it down the mountain as fast as I could and just get back to my room and have a good cry.
Man, I don't blame you one bit, because you put all the effort in going down there. Like, I mean, that's a lot. That to get one to qualify.
It was a big expense. It was a lot of time. It's not a cheap trip, as a lot of people know.
Yeah.
It's no Abu Dhabi, but it was expensive. And to put all your eggs in one basket for an experience like that, and to have it just kind of messed up on some weird logistics. And I know it was a crazy day. Like, I'm sure the organizers were scrambling about what, and there was all this back and forth about, are we going in water or are we not going in water? Because that was going to be some wardrobe changes for a lot of people. And frankly, a lot of people didn't have the proper clothing.
I've heard that from other people as well. Yes.
Yeah, like you're not like you find if you're a sponsored athlete and somebody could UPS or Purolator you some clothing real quick, like, hey, I need some really high tech wet water gear right now. Like a lot of the top guys were using like dry bags. Well, I didn't have a dry bag. That was the key. Like I know like Killian didn't use a dry bag and he won. But I know Ryan Atkins used a dry bag and that worked for him. But I don't think a lot of people in the age group just had that. And I know you're supposed to be prepared for every eventuality, but I just think a lot of people didn't have the right clothing for that weather, and especially once you add that weather with getting wet. And so it was a crazy day, and my story is just one of a lot of different stories that day.
So I was told by others that actually some of the high-end elites that did have dry bags were actually given them on site. So they were not overly prepared. They didn't have that actually coming in. They were given them on the site. That's just stories that I've heard. So we'll call that secondhand information, but I would trust it as fairly factual.
Wow.
So the
well,
question
I had gone
about
down,
that.
like I know I made a point of, probably one of the reasons I also didn't hear about my change in my start time was everybody I was there with the morning of, everybody I roomed with was racing elite, and their time didn't change at all. We all had a 2-hour delay.
Yeah,
that's the first thing they announced in the morning. The race is delayed 2 hours because we can't get equipment up to the top of the mountain. We can't get volunteers up there because all the roads are too slippery.
Yeah.
So 2-hour delay. So that's in my mind. I went, okay, I knew my start time originally and said, okay, 2-hour delay, got it. And I went down to the elite starts mostly because I always do. I always see my like elite friends off. But then I wanted to see like who was wearing what. Like what seems to be the gear of choice today. And there was everything from, there were guys like Ryan Kent wearing just half tights and a t-shirt and carrying nothing. And then there were guys with full pants, long, jackets, toques, the whole deal. And a lot of stuff in between. So I didn't really get any help there on what the right thing to do was. But yeah, and then I went and started my warm-up routine, and like I always do, and then then missed my start, and it all kind of fell apart.
So they delayed the start 2 hours, right? So your original start time was delayed 2 hours, right?
Yeah. So we woke up. I was rooming right in the village, so we could actually hear the loudspeaker in the morning. We looked out the window and went, "Oh my God, have you looked outside yet?" And there was snow everywhere. And they were like, what are they going to do? Are they going to shut down the water obstacles? Or are we doing that lake swim? What about like, because Ape Hanger, you can't get out of Ape Hanger without getting wet. You have to go in the water. And it was all back and forth. Like, no, of course, we're not going to put you in water because that's crazy. Because up on the top of the mountain, it's like -10.
Yeah.
And then it was like, nope, you're getting wet. With the exception of the dunk wall.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, well, I think they were at least smart enough to know we don't want people going full submersion. But you did, there was the swim, and there was most people got pretty wet on Ape Hanger. I didn't get too wet on that, but wet enough. So,
to me, I think, and I mean, you can side either way on this. I personally think it was irresponsible of Spartan to have the people do the swim. I don't understand why, if you need to shut down the dunk wall, you wouldn't shut down Ape Hanger, or at least just move it over dry land.
Yes.
The whole, to me, the water thing and the whole tough guy routine, that to me should not be part of the race. The race should be an athletic endeavor and not a who's the badass and can take the cold the better. To me, that's not.
Yeah,
that's not
I get it. Like, terrain and environment is part of the challenge, and that's, that comes with the territory. But I think there's smart risks, and then there are, I'm not gonna, if a rig is too difficult for me, hey, I got to go train. But how do you train for not getting hypothermia?
No, exactly.
And my pick pre-race, to be honest, my pick was I said Killian's going to win this because he's got the military background, and they do tons of cold weather, cold water emerge. So he's been there, done that. He's going to be ready for getting cold and wet because, he's an Army Ranger and he's lots of familiarity with that. But I think and there was some, very good elites that buckled into that cold and they just weren't, you send a whole lot of people out there with minimal body fat into those conditions.
I admit, man, you got me because I didn't think Killian would get it. I didn't buy the whole thing he had been saying all year where I'm, because he didn't have the greatest national series that year. I didn't buy the whole, I'm training for the world. I'm training for the world. I thought it was an excuse, but it turns out he was spot on. He really did it.
Yeah. I really think like it was his military training and that probably worked in his favor. Cause you're right. He hadn't had a great year up until then, and Ryan had, and of course John Alvin had, but John Alvin's always, he's always going to show up ready. He's going to you're not going to know what he's been up to, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, he's going to do fine.
All right. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take a quick little break, sponsor break. So we'll be back in just a couple seconds.
Do you like destination racing?
Are you looking for an endurance event where you can camp under the stars and be surrounded by nature and be with your friends?
Perhaps staying in an on-site cozy B&B is more your style.
Well, look no further.
Grip Farm Fitness has it all and more.
Located just 2 hours northeast of Vancouver in the beautiful Fraser Valley.
Participate in one of their events or just come out for hiking, horses, or much more.
Book any activity your heart desires at www.grit-farm.com.
That's www.grit-farm.com for our Canadian listeners, eh?
All right, and we're back just like that. So I know it's crazy technology. So now we've gone on about Spartan and your experience at Tahoe.
Yep.
Now let's get a little more into dwell in the past stuff. Let's jump into a little more modern day now. The last time I think I saw you at an OCR was probably the Platinum Rig 24. And I know that I'm a Platinum Rig ambassador. You're a Platinum Rig athlete. Just to bring up one more sour point, how Platinum Rig go for you?
They're like John Loney's worst hits. You want to talk about when I got bullied in elementary school? Or go there?
Did you? I apologize. Look.
I did. Well, that was it. Until I started lifting weights, then it was like, or developed a really sarcastic personality. That's a great defense against bullying, by the way, kids.
It's also a great enticer.
Get a razor sharp wit, and you can shut a bully down.
Very good. So yeah, Platinum Rig obviously wasn't great for you. I remember getting there and seeing your guys' team and going, oh man, that's a team. They're going to do really well. They're going to push a lot of pressure. And then how long was it in? Maybe a couple laps?
No, not even. It was the first lap. It was Ian ran first for us. Mm-hmm. So he got to do the whole, oh, by the way, you have to carry a sandbag. Oops. And then so I went second, and literally, it was like 10 minutes into not even 10 minutes in, and I cracked my head off of one of the, that's what I said to Dom afterwards. I said, your rigs are solid. They can crack a skull. I don't even know exactly what I did. It was those hanging cargo nets. Yeah. And I was on one, and I think somebody was on the other side, and somehow I got twisted. And as I was swinging from one to the next, I cracked my head off of this support beam, and all of a sudden I'm on the ground going, what the heck just happened? And then I got up, and when I got to the next obstacle, the guy that was there said, your head's bleeding. And I put my hand up there, and I'm like, oh, geez. And I hung in there for a while after, but then a few hours later, when I started, not making much sense when I was speaking, and I started failing stuff that I shouldn't be failing, and I couldn't answer basic questions, Then Ian kept saying the whole day, because Ian with his military background was like, you've got a concussion. You've got a concussion. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And then, no, but it turns out I had a concussion. So I ended up going to the hospital. So I lasted a solid 10 minutes for my team.
Now, in fairness, I mean, shit happens and all that. Now, the only reason I really bring it up is I want to know, are you guys going to be back in June?
I think we'd like to put some version together. I joked on another podcast. I'm like, I don't know if they're going to take me back. Man, you lasted 10 minutes. I don't know if we want to take another flyer on you second time around, but that's my plan. Now, for me, the big thing is, will I be back running? Under normal circumstances, I think I would have had this nagging knee thing of mine all fixed up by now. But COVID has slowed progress on that down. So and I've been through it before on the other knee, so I know the timeline. And so I would love to be back racing in June for sure, but I've got to get this knee dealt with, otherwise that's not going to happen. So.
All right, so I think we've wrangled you enough about this horrible past. I mean, I did mention that you do win stuff and you are really good, and instead I brought up everything that you destroyed at. So we'll give you a chance to mention, and it is a little off topic of the OCR, is the bike race I saw you at just recently.
Oh yeah.
Up at Hardwood. How'd that go? What was the plan there?
I have a lot of riding background. Back in the mid to late 90s, I was a pro triathlete and duathlete. So I had the cycling background, but then when COVID hit and then my knee injury hit and I couldn't run, I thought, well, what can I do? I want to stay out on I want to stay out on the trails. I want to stay out in the woods, but I can't run. And then I'm mountain biking. So mid-July, I bought a mountain bike and then kind of became a student of mountain biking. And I had a lot to learn. And a couple of my early rides were disasters, almost, killed myself multiple times. And then I started studying, technique and learning some of that. And then so, like I said before, when I start something, I want to know how good I am at it. So then I heard about, because I've ridden occasionally out at Hardwood Hills, and then they announced that they were going to have this 8-hour, the epic 8-hour race, which they do every year anyway, but they were going to do a slightly altered version of it this year. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm in. It's how many laps? It's roughly a 10K loop. And so how many of these loops can you do in 8 hours? And I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, let's try that. So I did it. So the day that I saw you there, which I didn't know the first couple of times I went by, I'm like, who's? Because you were sitting there, you had sunglasses on, and I'm like, it's not a place I would expect to see you. And then I
was pit crewing, I wasn't biking. So.
No, I know. But third time by, I went, hey, that's Steve.
Yeah.
And then so that day I think I got 11 laps done, but I felt like I could have done 12. So 8 days later, I went back and did it again and got 12.
Because the 100K wasn't enough. Just 8 days later, let's pound it.
100K wasn't enough. I needed to get more.
No,
so I went back and I got more, and it's
I was super impressed.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a fun. That day was fun because there were a lot of people there.
Yes.
And so it was kind of like what we'd all been missing, which was the social aspect, right? There were a few people, and then the next day I went back was on a Tuesday, and there was nobody there. There was myself and I think 4 other riders on the course the whole day. So very, very different, very lonely experience. Whereas when we went, there was a whole bunch of us and we kind of saw each other frequently, which was kind of fun.
And I'm sure too, when you were back 8 days later, it wouldn't have had the same atmosphere, and it wouldn't have so much harder in that non-race atmosphere to push yourself that hard, because you're just out there just for you, just to do a thing and to be able to push yourself.
Well, and the goal was, I needed to I didn't want to go back and do worse.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got to go back and at least do better than I did the first time. Experience should be a teacher. If you've done this already, you should be better at it the second time. And so, but that was hard. It was, I had to keep sort of finding internal motivation. And so when you have lots of people there, you've got riders that are coming up behind you to push you. You have riders ahead of you that you're chasing. But when you're out there by yourself, you have to find some way to push yourself. So very different feel, but it was still I was happy with the result. So,
well, like I said, during the race, picking up 100 kilometers, and I think from what I saw at that particular moment, and I mean, I don't know how the placing worked because it was a bit of an odd system that they used, but
yep.
from what I saw on that day, I think you were probably the second fastest I saw there that day. So I don't. Do you know how you placed it overall in that?
Yeah, I know how I ended up. I don't know overall. They did it by age class. So I know in the 50 plus category, I think I ended up 5th.
Really?
Yeah, there was two guys who are 51 or 52 who are very experienced riders, and they went there someday during the week and they rode together, and they were putting down they got 14 laps. And I don't know. I saw that and I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Like the lap takes about 35, 36 minutes. Like they were that far ahead. I'm like, holy crap. But that's where with mountain biking, that's where the technical ability comes in. Like, I can ride a bike quickly, but they obviously have technical skills that I don't possess. And so they're just, but that was impressive and disheartening at the same time.
But I mean, it's no different than us. I mean, like we might run against a guy on a track and go out on a track, and he's going to crank out laps that we can't possibly imagine. But you put him on the side of the hill and tell him to carry a 50-pound bag and go over walls and across rigs, and all of a sudden, we've equaled the playing field, right?
Exactly. Yeah, true.
Anyway, so one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I know you've been watching it, and so have I. We've been paying attention. Is the Spartan Games?
Yes.
And so anyone who doesn't know the Spartan Games right now, Joe DeSena decided, hey, we have no races. Let's throw together this kind of crazy event on my farm and invite some wicked athletes and see what happens. Now, so I'll let you jump in. I was impressed with some of the events, but I'll let you lay out what you've liked about it or not liked about it. How it's gone for you, what you've been involved.
Well, I've been trying to sort of piece it together because it's very hush hush and it's very, I didn't hear much about it before. Actually, I didn't really know much until you had mentioned it to me a while back. And then I started looking up stuff, and there's a few things on the internet. And, but yeah, from what I've gathered, it was part shit show and part something I'd really love to be a part of. Like it would have been amazing to be there.
Couldn't have described it better.
Just to see it all go down. You're kind of piecing because nobody can say anything because it's going to air sometime during the winter. So people couldn't talk results, but they could talk a little bit about the experience and what it was like. And there's been kind of a wide variety of opinions. I mean, there was a video with, Matt B. Davis did a bunch of stuff, and there was one with Hunter McIntyre, one with Aaron Newell, and then one with Nicole Miracle.
Yep.
And there was a wide range of opinions on the whole thing. But I would have loved to just be there, just to sit back and watch because there were some pretty incredible athletes there.
Well, I mean, for anyone who hasn't really heard anything about it, so essentially they went out there and they had it was like a 4-day event or something like that. And on the first day, they would have what they called a Spartan Cross, which looked like a short course multi-loop race, kind of on a flat, just sprinting around with obstacles, which personally I would have loved to have done.
Yeah, you would have loved that. Yes.
That would have been fantastic. Actually, there's a lot of things there I would have really enjoyed, and some I would have despised.
Would you like wrestling? Would you have wrestled?
I'm a black belt in judo, so I would have been all about the wrestling. So again, that one's okay. It's when they would have went to the 5-hour run and the 5-hour bike ride that I might have kicked my feet up in the cabin and called it a day. Yeah. So I mean, they had wrestling, they had heavy stone lifting, they did 2 different DECA challenges. And as well, like I said, they had, I believe, a 5-hour as many lap as possible bike race. They had as many lap as possible swim. And as well, a very long run. I'm not sure how long the run was, but I think it was at least 5 hours in that neck of the woods. So what was great though was, I mean, that would, to me, that's awesome. What the shit show part of it was, of course, Joe was involved.
Joe was being Joe.
Joe was being Joe, and actually called his shot. He said before it started he was going to do this crap.
Really? Yeah. Well, yeah, because it was interesting to hear, those of us that know him, that's not if you know him from death race stuff. Like that's his thing. He's going to throw you curveballs. He's going to tell you one thing and do another. And that's Joe. But what I found really interesting was the interview with Nicole.
Yes.
And she said the moment that he laid that stuff out, she said, I felt really embarrassed for my sport.
Mm-hmm.
Her sport being, she said, like, she's been primarily a Spartan athlete for the last while. And she said, I felt embarrassed because there were Olympians in that room. There were professional athletes. And it was, she said it was embarrassing that he was doing this to, you wouldn't do the analogy being, you wouldn't like, if you were playing in the Super Bowl, you wouldn't say, oh, I got a buddy. Do you mind if he takes a couple of snaps in the second half? Like, no, you don't do that. Or like, hey, I know you're in the middle of a football game, but how'd you like to carry rocks up a hill for half an hour and then we can resume the game? Yeah. People would say, are you nuts? Yeah. So the Spartan people were probably like, here, this is Joe being Joe. But some of the other athletes were like, no, this is, you don't do this at a a professional sporting event.
No, it totally, and to me, it had a chance. Like, this was a cool idea, and it had a chance to really become something marketable and something that they could put out there. And I mean, Nicole touched on it, and anybody watching, check out Matt B. Davis's interview with Nicole, Aaron, and Hunter. They're fantastic. He did a great job.
He did.
When she touched on that stuff and saying that, like, he came in and asked them to vote. Let's vote.
And then disregarded the vote.
Yeah.
Like, he kept talking until the vote shifted enough that.
Well, he essentially, he did I'm going to wear you down until you're so bored of me speaking that you're just going to vote my way, so that I'll go away.
You're just going to go, fine, do whatever. Yeah.
And I think that, and that's the way that Joe, he's probably the most important thing to our sport and the worst thing for our sport, all in the same process.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well said. I think that's true because of the, because that whole sort of like make things up as you go doesn't work in any other sport. No. And and we both kind of understand that that's part of Spartan, although Spartan Canada has become pretty predictable in the last few years. There hasn't been too many surprises there.
Surprise! It's not very good.
Well, I've always been. I mean, Spartan racing changed my life. It gave me a career that I never thought I was going to have. I loved the first race I did. I've loved being part of the whole Spartan experience. Even after Tahoe, I'm still a big fan. But I think there's this is what the whole OCR world is grappling with right now, and the stuff that like Tom's doing with Obstacle Sports Canada, and you're involved with that is like, how do we make this legit? For the people that don't know what it is and think that it's just craziness, Joe can sometimes verify that. Yeah, it's just craziness. But to be a legitimate sport, you've got to somehow find some standardization and make it less of a. I think that's what Nicole was getting at. That it just felt like, oh, people are going to think that what we do is a joke if you do this stuff. And then the other part of it, I don't know how you felt about it, but I kind of felt like and this is not to slag any of the other athletes that were there, because there were some impressive people there, but it was really tilted towards what a lot of us kind of believe. Yes, we believe that Spartan athletes or OCR athletes are the best athletes on the planet. Mm-hmm. But it looked like it was a little bit skewed towards proving that point.
Well, to no surprise.
Like the OCR athletes that were there are arguably people that are currently at the top of the sport.
Yes.
Nobody else that was there, unless I'm wrong, nobody else that was there is currently at the top of their sport. There are a lot of people that have been in the last few years. Like Sam Briggs was there.
I was just thinking that she would be close.
CrossFit, but she ran CrossFit in 2014, 2015.
Yeah, she's like still, a top 10.
Yeah, amazing athlete, but is not at the peak. And then, there were some other people there that are amazing at what they do, but they're not the best at what they do. And then, Ryan is, Lindsay is, Nicole is, Hunter, whatever it is Hunter's doing on a given day.
Well, I think Hunter could have drawn up this event. Like,
Yes, well, that was what the interview today with him. It was kind
yeah,
of like people had said, like, this is yours to lose, right?
yeah,
And he couldn't talk results. But I think that's how it was set up. Like, as he said, this is the kind of thing he's been training for his whole life, was an
yeah.
event like this.
Well,
And he would have done well at. I mean, I saw the one video clip of him wrestling.
oh
I
yeah.
don't know who he was wrestling, but he dropped them like a bad habit. It was like,
Well, I mean, and the
wouldn't
fact
wanna
that
wrestle.
wrestling was put in this, I'm sure Joe loved the thought of putting wrestling into the whole yeah. But the thing is, like,
Yeah.
Hunter was a collegiate wrestler,
Yeah.
So I mean, that's gonna put it in there, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and Nicole said in her interview she was really worried about, like if you had invited all those athletes there and then had them do a spear throw,
Mhm.
that would have been unfair because that's a skill,
Mhm.
and a skill that a lot of us have practiced, but a skill that a lot of people don't.
Yes.
That would be like, well, the next event is, hitting a golf ball off a tee. Well,
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, you're either proficient at that or you're not. That wouldn't be fair. That's got nothing to do with fitness. That's a skill-based activity. And so she argued that wrestling is very skill-based too, and it is. I remember I went to Simon Fraser University
Mhm.
in the mid '80s, and some of the best wrestlers in the world were at that university, like multiple Olympic gold medalists. And my roommate was a wrestler, and I learned all about that sport and how. I mean, it looks like two people rolling around on a mat,
Mhm.
but it was like that's such a technical sport.
Yeah.
And she said, she really worried. She feared for some people's safety, throwing them into wrestling. Like, you could catch an elbow, you could throw an elbow and not know that you're not allowed to do that.
Well,
And so
yeah,
she
and
said, I was worried. She was worried about people getting, hurt.
well, and
Bad
when you're
doing that.
talking such a difference in size and strength, and especially in some of the women or even the men. So let's take, for example, and I mean, I haven't seen this happen. I don't know if it happened, but if you had like Mike Wardian, who is a ultra marathon runner, and then you had that ex NFL guy weighing in 260 pounds, and I mean, even okay, he's a linebacker. He's going to know how to throw people around, whether he can wrestle or not. And Mike Wardian is 100 and
No.
Okay, let's just call it 100. Like, he is not a big man.
Soaking wet.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, definite fear of injury. I had talked to another a female Spartan pro, and she told me that if she got put in the ring with Sam Briggs, she'd have just fell on the ground in the fetal position and go, I'm done. That's it.
I think I might have done that if I was in a ring with Sam Briggs. I think.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'd be like, no, I'm a tall, thin man. Don't hurt me.
But yeah, it was cool. It was cool. And when we talked about the Hunter factor, it reminded me of TMX in the way where it looked like it was designed by him for him.
Yes.
So I know it wasn't, but yeah, it definitely fit in. And if you think about it, if you were really pulling in the top-notch OCR athletes, even, you wouldn't have brought in Hunter, because Hunter hasn't really done OCR in a while. But knowing what this event was going to be, and that he'll say he's OCR.
Yes. Well, he hinted at it in his interview this morning. He hinted that he's thinking of now coming back to OCR because he missed that whole, he spent a lot of time in a gym, and he was like, it was really cool to be back out on trails and out in the woods and doing that, and doing like some mountain biking and some trail running. And he really missed it. So, yeah, I mean, and I've said for years that I would put Ryan Atkins' skill set up against anybody.
Agreed.
And like, he's not gonna win but he's gonna be damn good in like anything that he does. Like, he's got serious like cross country skiing skills.
Yes.
Combined with his mountain biking and his trail running and his obvious strength. Like, there's nothing.
A high school wrestler too.
Yes, there's nothing you couldn't throw that guy into, and he's not going to do. He might not win, but he's going to do extremely well, and his mental capacity is off the charts.
He is cerebral.
He's crazy. That ability to put himself in that zone and that kind of pain cave thing and just go is great. I loved because some of the stuff that after the Eco Challenge, and there was some of the stuff. I guess he was answering some questions on Instagram about it when he could finally talk about it after it had aired. And somebody, I never saw it, but somebody said that there was a comment on it that he kept asking the race director when it was going to get tough. Like this is fun, but when's it gonna get hard?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. Like on his team, he was probably on a lot of stuff having to hold back.
Oh yeah, and the
But
thing is, he's
mountain
not.
biking,
Oh,
yeah, crazy. He's
and
crazy.
he's not showboating. That's not him being a jerk.
No,
No. That's
no.
just him legitimately going, hey, like, I'm ready for a challenge. Let's do it. That.
Yeah.
And
Like
that's
you
why
said, this was the hardest race on the planet. When's it going to get hard?
Not so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think personally, I mean, obviously not knowing who won the Spartan Games, I put my money on Ryan beforehand, and after seeing the events, I would still say I believe he probably come out on top, just because he might not have won every event, but there wasn't a single event there he wasn't going to be good at.
No, and Hunter, like as you said, like Hunter's been out of. I think Hunter's maybe his aerobic training is not quite what it has been in the past. Like that guy, for the size that he is, I've seen it up close and personal. For a guy that's like, what's he like, 6'3", 6'4", 230.
Yeah.
And that guy can run like stink. Like that's crazy. And he, but I probably in some of the endurance stuff, he probably wasn't quite where he has been.
And especially when you bring in a skill set like the mountain biking. I mean,
and he says like he rides a mountain bike quite a bit, but you heard like Nicole say like she had to try to find a bike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she looked at rental shops, and then I guess Aaron found her a bike to borrow that was a size too big for her, but she made do. And she'd have been fine endurance wise, but and by the sounds of it, the mountain bike was just a lot of up and down the mountain, so maybe not a lot of technical riding, so that would have helped a bit.
But like anything, I think if you're trying to find the best athlete, the fittest person in the world, you need to try to actually take away skill sets as much as you can. Yeah. And that's where you're right, where wrestling really, I mean, if you're just looking for the fittest athlete, no, wrestling's not a great thing to do. It's entertaining, and it's a wow factor. The mountain biking,
wrestling. Well, if you have a black belt, it's a skill set.
Yes. Oh, very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Wrestling is not brute strength. It's a skill set for sure.
No, and I mean, I've seen guys who look like they might be 300 pounds and not very fit, but can destroy me on a bike because I don't have that skill set, right? So the bicycling is another one, right? That's where Ryan would get such an advantage, being able to tear away on that. I think that we saw a video, he broke his chain right off the start, and I still think he probably made it up and won no problem. Oh yeah, like right off the start, he broke the chain on the bike.
Oops. And I think that would have been his own, because they had to bring their own bikes. So that's too bad. That would have been his own.
And that's another thing, right? If you're gonna line up competitors against each other on an even playing field, and you want biking to be it, you supply those bikes so that they're all identical.
Yeah, I wondered that when I watched the Eco Challenge, because like some teams seem to have like sponsors, like everybody was riding the same manufacturer. Mm-hmm. But I think they had to supply their own bikes there too. But I think they would have been given lots of advance notice, so you would have secured yourself a very good bike. I don't think you'd show up to Eco Challenge with a Canadian Tire bicycle.
Yeah, but I mean, the people for the Spartan Games, they didn't have as much notice.
No. So somebody like even like somebody like Nicole was like scrambling to find a bike that she could use, and even then wasn't the right size. But it's funny, the whole thing reminded me, like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but I know I am. The 70s and 80s when they had the Superstars competition on television.
I think a little bit in the 80s. I'm not quite too much in the 70s.
Maybe it bled into the 80s. But that was the concept then, was like bring a whole bunch of the best athletes on the planet together and see who's the best athlete.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, if you look back at it, it's kind of goofy. There was a Canadian soccer player, Brian Budd. He did fairly well on it. But then they brought Alex Bauman on there, who was like one of the top swimmers on the planet ever. And in some of the events, he literally looked like a fish out of water. Like just could not run to save his life, and had like put him in the water and he's just like a fish, but put him on land and it was just, he did not do well. Like Mark McCoy was a Canadian hurdler. He did really well in that. But that was the concept, was let's see and it tended to be football players tended to do very well. Yeah.
As long as there's no endurance.
Yeah. And there wasn't a ton. I mean, there was some paddling and some running. And, I remember watching a few years ago, I watched CrossFit Games with one of my sons. And after 3 events, he said, "Dad, you'd be winning right now after 3 events." I'm like, "Well, against those guys," because the first 3 events there was like a 7K trail run, a bike ride, and a swim. And as a former like triathlete, they were like, "You'd be winning at this point." I'm like, "I would be against those guys." But after that,
Yeah.
then I just get dusted. Like it would be like, I can't do that. I can't lift that.
Yeah.
I'm done. But they were like, "You'd be winning after 3." I'm like, yeah. And against that field, yes.
But that's when you fake the pulled hamstring and go,
I'd love to keep going with you guys, but
I had it.
I got an injury. I would have won this thing.
Awesome.
And then they look at my arms and go, "Yeah, no."
So let's just quickly take in what's in the future for you. Let's hope that your knee is rehabbed for next year and that we have races next year. What's your guy? What are you going for?
I think, well, I mean, like I said before, like I've never been one to chase like results. Like I said, like I think that results are, and I'm all for people that's their goal. Like if you need to fill a metal rack in your garage with metal, like more power to you. That's amazing. But I race really like selectively, and I focus more on the process of training and getting fit. And then if you're fit and you race well and you take care of yourself, then all that other stuff just comes. But it makes me really nervous. I think it's the coach in me when I see people go, "My goal in this race is to be top 5. My goal in this race is to win my age group." Like, but what the goal should be, have a great race well, race smart, focus, and whatever that gets you is gravy.
I love that.
All the preparation is in the training, and the medals and the results are just the byproduct. But I've found from personal experience, when I chase results, it's not good, because you could have the race of your life. You could say, "Well, I'm going to be top 3." You could have the race of your life and finish 4th. Well, then by your own metric, you failed, because your goal was top 3. You got 4, but you could get beaten by 3 extremely good racers and have had the race of your life, but you're going to go, 4th isn't what I was going for. I'm like, you're missing the point here. So for me, that's the thing. Like I want to take it. I need to get my running back.
Yep.
And because that's for me. If you had said to me in early March, what would you do if you couldn't run and had no access to a gym? I'd be like, I'd be done. And then all of a sudden, that's what happened, because my knee went first week in March, just before COVID, and then all the gyms shut down.
Yeah.
So all I was like, I couldn't run and I had no access to a gym. So I found other ways to stay fit. So I'd like to get my run back. And then the plan is sort of pick up where I left off. And the tough part is, and I've mentioned this to a couple of people, like it's missing a, I mean, everybody's missed a lot this year, clearly. But missing a year when you're 56 is different than missing a year when you're even like, 40, 45. It's, I've only got so many bounce backs left in me. And that's the tough part is I want to get back and race again. And like everybody, like I miss the social part of it. We've talked about the virtual stuff, which I think is amazing. But it's never going to be as good as the whole getting together. Like, and I know, like the pre-race and the post-race is what, and the weekends at the Airbnbs and stuff like that. Those are just amazing experiences. So I'd love to get all that. I'd love to get back to running. Other than that, like, I found lots of other ways to stay fit. I have my little circuit in the woods. I do. It's like my little barbarian workout, and I go out and I flip logs and I carry stones and I hang from trees and I climb a tree that I probably shouldn't because it's dangerous, but whatever. and I've just found lots of ways to keep my grip up and keep strong. And, people come by me on the trails and they wonder what the heck I'm doing. Like, why are you flipping that log?
Doesn't that make you do it more? You want to do it more to just freak them out?
It makes me want to do like that. I was only going to do 20 of them, and now I'm going to do 30.
Exactly.
Just because you called me on it. And so my fitness is really good. And with like the mountain biking, I think I've kept up that part. But yeah, I mean, I've been a runner since I was 13, and that part of me, I want to get back. So when I get that back, then hopefully the rest falls into place. And yeah, I mean, I think we're all wondering. I mean, even before COVID, we were all wondering what the future of OCR was going to look like, right?
Yeah.
And there was going to be, the Obstacle Sports Canada was going to be doing that big event in Montreal and putting together
2021, hopefully.
2021, yeah.
Hopefully.
And so that people are waiting to see what that's going to look like. And I think that'll be great. I think, the ideal race, I mean, this is a huge discussion, as you know, but the ideal race is probably midway between what I would like and what you would like.
Probably. Yeah.
Like it's somewhere between obstacle crazy, ninja type stuff and a trail run. But I mean, I like the obstacles, but I like when people say, they'll say before a Spartan race, I saw the map and it's a total runner's course. I'm like, why do you say that like it's a bad thing?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I've changed my opinions a bit, and I used to be one of those guys who would run a Spartan and not do well and just say, well, the course is too easy, or the obstacles are too easy. And since then, I don't know if I've gotten a little older or matured or whatever. It hasn't been that long. It's only been like a year, but I've got to the point where I realized, okay, the course is not too easy. You're too damn slow. All right, you have to go faster. And the obstacles aren't too easy. That's just what that course is. There are other courses where the obstacles are at different levels. So really, the only person in any race who can claim a race is too easy is the dude who wins. And if he said it was too easy, then maybe it was too easy. Everybody else, if it was too easy, you didn't go fast enough. But every race has its place, and every all different levels and different scenarios. It's just ones that favor different skill sets. One of the things that you were saying, I mean,
that's the going forward. I think that's the, it's not like, in a lot of ways, OCR doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. There's other sports we can look to see how you deal with that element, right? Like varying terrains and varying courses. I mean, from my background, like with cross country running, same thing. They had to kind of figure out what, if you're going to have a world championship in cross country, what do your courses have to look like? If you're going to do downhill, like alpine ski racing, every race has a different terrain, and some racers love some skiers love going to Kitzbühel, and some hate it because that just plays to their skill set. And it's the same with OCR. There's some races you're going to love, and some races you're going to go, that's not my cup of tea. People hear about like the crazy grip fest at like that England did there twice. And people are like, no way. I mean, I was one of them like that. I watched that, and that scared the crap out of me. Like I might not finish, which is a weird sensation to be like on a start line going like, I might not get through this. There might be something out there that is going to stop me. And that's weird. I mean, that's something I had to get used to when I started OCR. It was, I never stood on the line of a running race and said, like, what if there's something out there that keeps me from finishing?
What if I can't run all the way?
I'm going to drag myself across the finish line, barring disaster. But OCR, you're like, there might be something out there that I can't do. And that's scary, but it's also kind of what makes it neat. So, I think it's going to be a lot of really neat discussions about how do you standardize a sport that can't really be standardized. Well, again, we can look to mountain biking or cross-country skiing or there's a lot of sports that deal with every race is different than the last one in some respects.
Even marathons. I mean, different courses are different.
Well, you try to standardize the amount of vertical you can have, and you can't use a course that runs point to point, like the Boston Marathon. You can't count for a world record because it goes point to point. You have to have a course that sort of comes back to where it starts, so that the wind equals itself out, stuff like that. So,
but the point is, you can standardize something that seems like it can't be done. It is possible.
Yes, and again, we have lots of other sports we can look at and say they've dealt with it. And I mean, there'll be a lot of discussion about obstacles and stuff, but I mean, the other sports deal with it too. Like, if a log falls across a course in a cross country race, well, you just leave it. You tell the runners to go over it. Well, what do we do when we get to the log? Figure it out. Jump over the log. What do we do when we get to this? Figure it out.
Yeah, and I think OCRWC has done as good a job as anybody at really finding that sweet spot of what's difficult and challenging and exciting for just about everybody, and yet they haven't gone too far. I will say right now, and I have said it to Adrian and to the guys at OCRWC, that I think right now that they're on the edge, where with gibbons and obstacles like that if they go too much more grip intensive, they're going to isolate. They're going to have people that are just not able to complete.
And that's the eternal debate with OCRs. How do you make an event that is both challenging for the elites and yet not completely out of reach for the age group? And that's the part that other sports really don't have to grapple with. Like, nobody's ever set up a World Cup mountain bike race and said, but what about the age groupers? This might be too hard for them.
Yes.
But in OCR, we kind of have to do that, because that's the beauty of the sport, is you get
funds the sport.
Yes. Yeah. You could do a course that only 50 elite athletes would complete, but you're not going to make any money.
No.
Because you need the other 6,500 people to show up, and that's the argument with a lot of people have had with Spartan too, is that it was getting far too easy for elites.
It is a
but
little.
I know in talking to people that higher ups in Spartan in Canada, that they said, they track that stuff. Like, how many people do one Spartan race and never do another one? And they want to know, like, why is that?
Yeah.
What didn't you like about it? Like, a lot of us, we did one and we got hooked. But a lot of people did one and said, like, I'll never do that again. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So what is it that keeps people coming back, and how do you challenge them without crushing their soul?
Well, in the case of Spartan, it's always confused me as to why you can't. For example, you have every Spartan race has a multi-rig, whether it's a sprint to whatever, or there's no reason you can't let the elites in the age group go through, and then in a matter of 2 minutes, switch the holds on a multi-rig to change it to straight rings for the open class, or whatever you want, or leave one difficult lane and then simplify the other ones for a Spartan for the open division. It's not that hard. I mean, having volunteered a ton of Spartan races, and usually on the multi-rigs is where I do it. I mean, I can switch that thing over in seconds. It just, it kind of baffles me why they haven't taken advantage of that. I've heard other people like Ryan Woods suggest that as well. And I mean, I guess, Spartan doesn't listen to Ryan Woods very much either, but
it's a love hate.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I've met Ryan a few times in person. He shoots from the lip.
He's entertaining.
He's very entertaining, and he's very, I don't know that he's likable. I mean, I like him. I get along with him, but Anyway.
I would have liked to have seen him and Aaron Newell in that wrestling ring, though. That would have been good.
That would have been like a blood fest.
Oh yeah.
Just let them go. No, they're done. No. Just let them go.
Yeah.
They got stuff to work out. Just let them go. This is between them.
Awesome. All right. So you mentioned you're doing coaching, right?
Not currently. I mean, I've done.
Not currently. Okay.
Coaching. Yeah. That's one of me. I'm very close to retirement, so that's one of my things on the back burner, is getting that the coaching part of me going again.
All right. Well, if you ever get started, let us know, and we'll be glad to tell everyone in the world we can about it.
Beauty.
Anybody else anything you want to shout out, or anybody you're working with or anything like that?
No, I think like a lot of people in COVID right now have just become pretty solitary. I mean, it's and then that's been tough for a lot of people, that is the isolation part of it. And I think to open a huge topic, but I think like mental health right now is, for a lot of people, is a huge concern. Like, I think I've talked to other people about we in the sport, which is amazing. We get together and we kind of we know each other's race results. We know a lot about our training. People post about their workouts and training. And then we kind of before COVID, we got together for these races, and then we all kind of went back to our lives, and most of us didn't know much about lives. And I think now a lot of people, without, we saw it last week with the gyms closing in the 3 regions in Ontario. A lot of people, there was this huge outcry, like, I need my gym. And it's not just for the equipment, it's for the people. Like, I need to see my people at the gym. That's my social outlet, and you take that away from people. And I think that's, for me, that's been a bit of a struggle too. I mean, I'm solitary. I'm an introvert that can act like an extrovert when I have to. But right now, there's not many options to be an extrovert. Yeah. Like, talking to you is amazing because I'm happy to talk to like anybody. If it has to be.
All right, I'm anybody.
Like, I don't know. I didn't mean it like that, but I just meant like, if it has to be virtual, if it has to be via Zoom, then so be it. I think a lot of people in the sport are struggling, and the people that you would think, well, the guy is like so successful and does so well. How, but it's tough right now for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And I think some people don't have a lot of patience with people that say like, oh, I can't go to my gym and that really, but it's more than just the workout. It's the, it's the people you see there, and we're all kind of missing that right now, and because we're not getting it at races, and then when you're not getting it, in training either, it's tough. And and I've been a pretty independent athlete most of my life. Like, I've always had a coach to like look over my shoulder, but I'm pretty self-motivated. But I think that it's hard right now for a lot of people who are missing those other people who motivate them. So
it's true. And I mean,
that would be my shout out right now. It's just everybody hang in there. This too shall pass. I know it's it's a struggle sometime, but we'll be back racing eventually, whatever it looks like, and and we'll be good.
I think it's the perfect way to call it a day, bud. All right.
Sounds good, yeah.
All right. So again, John, thanks for coming on. And
my pleasure.
Hopefully we'll talk soon. Take care, everybody.
All right. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to the BeastNet Canadian Edition podcast.
Please click on subscribe, like us, and feel free to share the podcast with others.
Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify.
We'd also love to hear from you on who or what type of content you'd love to hear on the show on upcoming episodes.
The BeastNet Canadian Edition podcast is proudly brought to you by
Grit Farm Fitness.
Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or at beastnetpod.com.
That's beastnetpod.com.